one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Acknowledgement certificate of posting.
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Second motion by Munzer, second by Medina. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion carries. Thank you. We're going to move certificate of presentations and recognitions. First one on the we have is actually there are three certificates. We have one for Jeff Collard, Dan DeVries, and Catherine Hughes. Is there a motion to approve all three?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion carries. First one, can I have Jeff Collard up to the podium, please? Supervisor Medina. And then Supervisor Barrios, please come up to the podium. Oh, former. Sorry about that, Mark.
Oh, thank you so much. It's an honor. Jeff, it is my privilege and honor to present you this certificate of recognition. My planning commissioner, I had the pleasure of appointing him in 2009 as a planning commissioner, and he served for 8 years alongside, as long as I did, alongside me. And we appreciate you, Jeff, for the 8 years of outstanding, dedicated service to the county of San Benito. Thank you so much. It hasn't gone unnoticed that you put in a lot of time along with all the other planning commissioners. And I know many a times you'd work late, wouldn't even have time to go home for dinner or change, and you would still make it to your planning commission meetings. So your dedication has been exceptional. You saw us through a lot of really big projects, important projects. You also helped us with a lot of ordinances, a lot of political ordinances that you were there for us. So we want to thank you for that, and I want you to know how much I appreciate you as my commissioner and as my friend. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, former Supervisor Barrios and Supervisor Medina. Next item is Dan DeVries. Can you please come to the podium? Supervisor Patello.
Thank you. Well, Dan, this is kind of a bittersweet moment for me. And Dan has been my planning commissioner from 2004 when I was elected, and he served faithfully. You know, it's being a planning commissioner is probably the toughest job, I think, maybe barring being a supervisor in the county. You have to kind of clean up all the ordinances before it comes before us, take a lot of criticism, and you know, try to make things work. And one of the things I liked about Dan right from the start, and the reason I selected him as my planning commissioner, is that I knew he would keep the interests of the county at heart and number one. And he did so, and now he's moving on to the San Juan City Council, and I expect great things from him in the city of San Juan Bautista. We worked together on the general plan and made some terrific provisions, I think, that protects our rural and agricultural heritage. We worked on housing together as far as trying to develop affordable housing for all of our citizens and our whole community. And the few minutes I have here, Dan, I can't even begin to express the gratitude that I have for you. But I know we'll be lifelong friends.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Buddy. Thank you very much.
You want to say a few words? Or?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Supervisor Patello and supervisors. Let me just say briefly that it has indeed been a pleasure working with you and for you for the last 12 years. As Supervisor Patello indicated, we've done a lot of good work during that time, a lot of big projects, as Supervisor Barrios mentioned. Solar Gen and the general plan, the hillside ordinance, I think was a nice piece of legislation that we got through. And as I mentioned to Director Barnes, I hope that this isn't goodbye forever. I wish very much and would be very honored to continue to help the county in any way I can, in my role as a councilman for San Juan Bautista, but also in my role as a personal citizen as well. Otherwise, I wish you all the best of luck and see you around. Thank you.
Catherine, is she here? Oh, Supervisor Rivas, thank you for coming.
Good morning. How are you? Good to see you. Good morning to everybody. So certainly we're here as a board to recognize by presenting this a certificate of appreciation to Catherine. Is it Hugh? Huff. That's why I came up here to the clerk and said, how do you pronounce it? I don't know. Apparently we both didn't know. So thank you for your contribution and invaluable service to the workforce, the Development Board for 9 years. So I commend you for your service. It's very challenging for us as members of the board to appoint people to these types of boards, because usually after about a few months, they're calling us saying, this isn't a good fit for me. So thank you for your service.
Welcome.
And you're more than welcome to say a few words.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate the award. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, fellow supervisors, for making those presentations. Next thing on the item will be public comments. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board on items of interest not appearing on today's agenda. No action will be taken unless provided by Government Code Section 54954-2. Any speaker cards?
Marty Richmond. Good morning, this lovely January day. It's not raining. Marty Richmond from Hollister. First, before I get to my main subject, just a short thank you to all the folks in emergency services who helped out people who live in the county that were impacted by the terrible flooding that has occurred in some areas. And so I had a short interface with some
project information related to 2 routes in particular in AMBAG's jurisdiction. And one of them has to do with San Diego County, which is State Route Highway 25. And I believe what happened is they made the amendment to reflect that we've incorporated it back onto the constrained list. Is that correct? I always get confused with constrained, unconstrained. But they made sure that in this regional plan that it reflects what we've done at the local level. So that's the update from AMBAG for this past month. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Rivas. Supervisor Patello?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everyone. This past week, I attended a RCRC meeting, and Chairman De La Cruz attended the meeting. I thank him for taking the time in his busy schedule to attend that meeting. It kind of gives him a flavor of the hardships that I go through going to Sacramento. And and this trip was really no change from that, as we received a preliminary report of the governor's budget that the CEO briefly mentioned. And I don't get too excited about the governor's budget until about April, but one of the things that is pretty apparent what's end up happening is that the Williamson Act is be funded only $1,000, so we're not getting subvention funds again. And RCRC is trying to work on trying to structurally change how we approach those contracts and funding back to the counties. The other item that is of real serious note and to this community, the IHSS program, there's a coordinated care initiative that's be eliminated, and what that means is that more of the costs for IHSS is to be shifted back to the counties. I know some of the supervisors here have had meetings with SEIU in recent weeks. I know they're anxious to try to improve wages and benefits for their people that they represent in IHSS. I think the chances of that are small and nil, probably nil. We hoped we could keep the program at its status quo for the time being, and the problem is not here. The problem is in Sacramento, and I hope they get that message. The governor is calling on the legislature to try to add $4.2 billion annually to improve maintenance of highways and local roads. That's something I have talked about for the last 3 years, I think, locally, and I don't think that goes quite far enough. It really needs to be what the legislature is working on, which has the right numbers: AB 1 by Frazier and SB 1 by Bill, and that calls for about $6.5 billion in additional funding for our roads. And anybody who's traveled anywhere by road can see that we're in very serious critical need. I mean, it's you talk to people, travel out of state. California roads are the worst roads in the country, and this needs to be addressed. It should have been addressed 3 years ago. This is the third year that this legislation has been put out in front in Sacramento, and hopefully this year there's success. And last, we had a COG meeting. Chairman De La Cruz and I attended, and there's be a bus stop improvement at Anzar High School, which I'm very happy about in District 2. And there was continued work on the work plan for a local transportation tax. I think our director at Council of Governments is doing a fine job in putting that together. I kind of cringe to go back to a ballot measure to ask the taxpayers for more help, but we have to do something as well locally to address this road problem. That's all I have right now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Patello. Supervisor Munzer?
None.
Supervisor Medina?
None at this time.
Thank you. First thing I want to do is really thank our staff for doing a good job, especially during this last couple of weeks, and also our administration staff for actually giving us the tools that we need. I'll give you a perfect example. This morning, my computer wasn't working, and calling Louis Ray, and right away they have their staff zipping on and getting our computers, our information update. We really do appreciate that. Thank you, Ray. Really do. The other item is, I attended a Chispa event in which about 1,100 families will apply for just measly, what is it, Marty, 40 apartments? 36. 46. Some of those numbers. And I had the fortune of verifying that list, the lottery list, because they actually, every family was given a number, and there'll be calls and letters sent out to these lucky families, I guess I can say that. And let me tell you, 1,100 families applying for just 36 units. There's a crisis in our community because there's still a lot of families that live in garages. You have 2 families that live in one home, and it's just getting worse. Every unit that we built in this community goes to a family who can afford a $700,000 unit, and I know a lot of our local residents ain't buying those new homes. So there is a crisis that we have out there in the community. Another item, I'm so glad that Ray and our staff attended the Stepping Up function, because I went to a seminar last year, and I went to the Stepping Up seminar, and I got a lot of information. I brought it back, and I told Ray, look, Ray, this is something that we should look into, and I really want to give our DA, our sheriff, and our probation department, and Ray, for taking that leadership and taking advantage of these opportunities that could actually provide wraparound services to our inmates in our community and families too. And it's a good program, and I hope it comes forward, and I hope it comes to the Board of Supervisors sometime in the near future. Thank you, Ray, for that. And I also attended the COG meeting, and Supervisor Batella was correct. We don't need the public support in another sales tax. I, for one, said at one time I would not support another sales tax that requires 2/3 votes. But I think driving out in the community, we owe it to the public another opportunity, and I hope we can bring this and deliver this another sales tax, a road tax, in the next couple of years. And then I also attended the RCRC conference, and all I got to say is I concur what you said, Supervisor Batella. Thank you. All right, let's move on. Consent agenda. Any supervisor wish to pull any item out of consent? Supervisor Patello?
Yeah, 14 and 20.
14 and 20. Supervisor Munzer?
None.
Supervisor Rivas?
None from me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Medina? No. Anyone from the public? None? Ray? None? What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval of the remainder of the consent calendar.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 14, Supervisor Patello.
Well, to me, I can understand having reliable vehicles. We need vehicles that is safe for the people that we're trying to serve, as well as for our employees. But I think a pickup is the wrong type of vehicle for the Department of Health and Human Services. I think we could go with a sedan, and it would be at a less cost. Every dollar that we spend on a vehicle is one less dollar that we could put towards staffing and services, and that's just kind of how I feel. I think it's the wrong vehicle. I think it's somebody in the department that wants to drive a pickup rather than a car.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sorry. That's just how I feel about it.
The reason why we have come forward and asked for a pickup is to transport equipment and, things that we need, to do events in the community, such as the immunization clinics, such as the healthy lunches at the schools, such as the events that we do at the farmers market, and we just have a need to be able to have something that will provide us with that ability to get to those events and do a good job.
And from what I read in the staff report, we haven't had a pickup in the past, and we've been doing just fine. We've had a van, and I don't know. I rather go the other way, but I'm just one person. And if there is that much equipment and stuff, I could see on a rare occasion, perhaps we could borrow a pickup from Public Works. They got a lot of pickups too, relatively brand new. I just feel that we've done well without it, and maybe cut down on tables and chairs. I have no idea.
Okay. That is our background on it, and however the board votes, that's what we'll do.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments from fellow supervisors? None? Anyone from the public? Okay. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to oppose this staff recommendation.
Is there a second? I'll second it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against?
No.
No.
Motion fails 2-3. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval of staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry. Can I get it again? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
No. Motion carries 3-2. Okay. Number 20, Supervisor Botello.
Yes, thank you. I think we have the cart before the horse in this item. So,
well said.
yeah. Anyhow, what we have is a pretty expensive horse trailer, pretty expensive, I think. And I know that we had some large animal rescues, for example, this past week, at a couple of different occasions, and I'm sure the animals were transported. I'm not saying that we don't need a horse trailer or a livestock trailer, I'll call it, but I think we need to, before we go into this path, have a better coordinated program with the volunteers of the equestrian rescue group, with animal control, coordinated with OES and so forth, rather than buying a trailer that I have serious questions whether or not animal control even has a vehicle that could pull it. And then we're parking in their lot, and I don't quite, maybe that could be the first question. Do they even have a vehicle that could pull this trailer?
Yes, they do.
Okay. And I'm going to just vote against it, because I don't think we have a program with the volunteers that are part of this equestrian rescue, and it needs just to be better coordinated. That's what I would be spending money on, is the program first, and then worry about the equipment as we progress in that.
Right. So let me give a little background and I think address some of your concerns. This was a request that came from the Hollister Police Department on behalf of their animal control division. It was submitted to the Gang of Five to utilize Homeland Security grant funds, and approved by the Gang of Five. They do have a vehicle. They do have the capacity to utilize this trailer.
Excuse me, Kevin, can you explain to the public the Gang of Five?
Sure. Sorry. So every year, the Office of Emergency Services is awarded a set amount from the California Office of Emergency Services, which is passing the money through from the Department of Homeland Security. So last year, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $133,000. The Gang of Five consists of city police chief, county sheriff, city fire chief, county fire chief, and the county health officer. So this group, this body of five, receives proposals from various public safety departments in the county and vets the proposals and decides on the best way to spend the money. There has to be a nexus to terrorism, to security, and so during the last fiscal year, the Hollister Police Department submitted the request for this trailer. Like I said, it was approved by the Gang of Five or the Body of Five. They do have the capacity to tow it, and Animal Control has said that they can manage the trailer and utilize it. And they probably would have utilized it over the last week and a half. Most of the trailers that were used previously were private trailers or those owned by a couple select volunteers. So this way, the Animal Control would have their own in case volunteers were not needed, or the trailer could be used by a volunteer group as we continue to build that volunteer group up.
Okay. You just about got me sold. Just about have me sold. Another question I have. I see that the sale is at 101 Livestock Trailer Sales, which is a great place. I bought a trailer there myself last month. Did you go out for any sort of bids, or just went out to the 101 Livestock?
So we went by the recommendation from Animal Control, the specs that they were looking for this trailer, and from what they were able to identify, there was only 2 vendors in the state of California. One being 101, one being I don't know where, somewhere else, I believe in Southern California. 101 was not only cheaper, but closer, logistically, no shipping, all that. So it wasn't an official, RFP or, process, but we did get quotes from the only 2.
Well, you demonstrated that you did some research. That's good. Yeah. And last question I have is about 6, maybe 8 months ago, we talked about radios and the lack of and having blind spots out in the unincorporated areas. I think there's a couple down in South County, and I know there's a couple in the west part of the county. Have we resolved that?
I don't believe it's been resolved, but it's in the works. I believe the board will see an item on the next agenda for approval to move forward with that project, also using this Homeland Security grant funds. I think it's in the neighborhood of $40,000 or $50,000. And once we get that approval, that should hopefully help alleviate some of those gaps in coverage.
Yeah, because I know this board has expressed that needs to be resolved. And I think it's for officer and public safety, and as long as that's being resolved, with that you have the money and it's getting done. I just didn't want to get ahead of it and spend $20,000 on a horse trailer when we should spend that money on fixing our radio program.
Right. And I believe the only reason this one's coming up first is because there's been a lot more work in terms of coming up with a plan of how they're going to do it, because they're moving some of the equipment to the sheriff's office at 2301 that's currently on the old sheriff's building, as well as building the capacity. So that's the only delay. But I know Captain LaMonica was working on it, and so I believe you'll see it on the next board meeting, if not the following.
Okay. And lastly, maybe the Gang of Five could talk about this with Animal Control. I understand they operate on cell phones. I think they should be on a radio. I think that's part of the issues that we've had with Animal Control as far as tracking the calls and duration and the costs. And it's good to be able to communicate with all agencies on an emergency like we had out in Lover's Lane. But thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, Supervisor Patel. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the last item that was pulled, the pickup truck for Health and Human Services, I was able to contact Jim Riding Sword and had my questions answered, because I had some of the same concerns that Supervisor Patel had about that item. This item, I couldn't see bothering Kevin over the weekend. I think he had a little bit more important things that he was worried about than a horse trailer. But I, too, expressed some of the concerns of Supervisor Patello over this item. So I'm glad it's been pulled. One thing that I would like to maybe express. I know the Game of Five it's their money; they take a vote on it. But I know in intergovernment we are kind of discussing the whole animal control issues with the city of Hollister and the county. I believe I don't remember if it was this meeting, our board meeting, or if it was the intergovernment. I didn't even realize that animal control was dealing with large animals. So my recommendation would be to continue this item, let it be discussed at intergovernment a little bit more, and so that we can understand what the thought is behind it. And then we can maybe hear at that meeting how the situation over the last couple of weeks in Lover's Lane was dealt with, and how this would benefit another such event on that proportion. So my recommendation would be to continue this item. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Listening to my fellow supervisor Munzer's, it's not their money. That's my understanding. It's actually they could decide to make recommendations, and the Board of Supervisors could approve or deny their request. Correct, Kevin?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, the money is awarded to the county, and the Gang of Five is who prioritizes and picks projects.
But the Board of Supervisors still have to give the final say, and if the board does not approve it, that money is not allocated.
That is correct.
Thank you. Any other questions, fellow supervisors? None? Thank you. I'll go up to the public. Anyone from the public? Chief?
Thank you, Board and Chair. So this past 2 weeks has been pretty troubling and a lot of work for animal control and all of our county workers. We did 133 animal rescues on Lover's Lane. 83 of those are at the City of Hollister shelter, and 50 are at the fairgrounds right now because they're large animals. We've dealt with large animal rescues for as long as we've had animal control here in the county. And the thought with having a horse trailer or a large trailer would be that if we needed to rapidly deploy, we could do that prior to even volunteers being called out. So for us, it's about the efficiency of deploying those needed services as quickly as possible and using the appropriate funding through the Homeland Security. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions of the Chief? None? Thank you, Chief. DA Candace, please.
I will be talking under two hats. One, as DA, animal control does not just watch over puppy dogs and kitty cats. They handle the large animals too. To rely on our volunteers, which our volunteers are great, but sometimes they're not available. Sometimes they cannot get to their equipment, etc. Animal control does have the need, and we do get cases criminally with large animals. Now on the personal side, as a rancher and experiencing what we have just experienced, the call out that came, the rescues that came, the time frame it took for these volunteers to go home, get their vehicles, bring them in, etc., could be shortened very much by animal control having this stock trailer. And I would encourage you to approve it.
Thank you. Hold on, Candace.
Sorry.
Supervisor Munzer.
So, again, Candace, thank you. And thank you for bringing out the criminal cases involving large animals. So do you know how that has been handled in the past when an animal needed to be moved under a criminal?
I'm not positive. My belief is, and Chief could back me up on this or correct me, but I believe Julie Carrero would go home, get her personal trailer, so she'd have to leave animal control, go home, get her personal trailer, load the animal up, and take it, and usually they would be going to 101 Livestock.
And how many times a year are we dealing with criminal cases?
It varies. Every
3
once in a while you
or
get a
4, or-
rash. I really can't say.
Okay,
Last
all right.
year, Chief, probably and some pretty outrageous ones.
I didn't hear the chief.
He said about a dozen.
Doesn't? Okay, all right.
It
And that-
varies.
Okay, that's good to know.
Supervisor Bettina?
One question. Now, someone using their personal trailer, what type of liability does that cause for the county?
You would have to ask county council, but I would assume there is liability with it.
Would hope that we would have some insurance requirements in place.
And do we have that?
I have no idea at the moment. You might remember that animal control and the people staffing it are the city of Hollister, so it would come through we just simply contract with them. So whatever insurance requirements there are would be through the city of Hollister.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? from the public?
Good morning, Marty Richmond again. I hope our anti-gang task force is taking on this gang of five. We're not.
The anti-gang task force?
Well, don't we have an anti-gang committee, right? We wouldn't want the gang of five to be running amok here. In the, I appreciate Supervisor Medina's question. I think it indicates the problem, which is you're operating as a government agency. When people have an emergency, they operate as people. They don't worry about whether or not they have insurance or not. They're going to go home, get their own trailer. They're not going to charge the county, and they're not going to charge the city for the wear and tear, and they're going to take their chances and go out and rescue the animal. I think that a lot of that goes on here in San Benito County. I don't think the government agencies appreciate it enough. I know I've talked to a lot of people in both the city and the county governments. I don't want to be squealing on them, who, when they're in a bind, wind up pulling out their personal credit card because they need something to help the county or help the city, and they wind up pulling out their personal credit card and putting it on there. Even if they get the money back, that's not the issue. The issue is that's no way to run a railroad. So we have to. I think it's important when it comes to emergencies, you just don't know. The truth of the matter is, a big emergency like Lover's Lane, you're probably going to be able to get people to donate use of their trailers. But 3 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday, when it hasn't been raining, and there's a criminal action going on, and there's a large animal involved, you're not going to find somebody to do that. So you need to have the trailer. I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it, as the old saying goes. When it comes to emergency services, put the bandages and the emergency food in your closet and hope you never use it. Don't worry about what it costs. And in this case, I think, even though we probably won't use it very much, maybe 10 times a year, in my opinion, it's a lot better investment than a pickup truck for taking stuff on Wednesdays down to the middle of Hollister to set it up. So I encourage you to, I hate to spend the money, believe me, but I encourage you to support this. Thank you for your time.
Hold on, Marty. Supervisor Botello.
Oh, no, I have my comments after public comment.
Thank you, Marty.
Okay, because I have more jokes.
There's a lot of cliches in this.
You started it.
I know.
Anyone else in the public? And
Good morning. Might be brief. The beginning of the conversation began with the Gang of Five and who was appointed. If the Gang of Five is structured as it is, has recommendations brought to it, and picks something, I'm not understanding what the debate is with the Board of Supervisors, respectfully. It seems to me this should have been on the consent agenda, so as a point of government, I'd like to, and a citizen would like to say, why are we questioning the Gang of Five? Thanks.
Thank you. I'll have a response to that at the end of the closed session. Anyone else from the public?
Valerie Aguilin. I'm rural San Juan Bautista. And a trailer does not take a lot of maintenance. There is no motor. It can sit there and wait for need. It's something once invested in is going to last a long time. So it's an investment that's wise. And what was said by our district attorney is that, it's when you need it, you need it. And at this point, I think the condition of the county shows that we should have something in place. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. All right, anyone else? Okay, I'll close it. Supervisor Botello?
Okay, I'm happy I pulled this off of consent. It was on consent. And the reason I pulled it off was that, I wasn't sure if the animal control had the ability to pull a trailer. Next meeting will be a vehicle, and where does that money come from? 2, I needed to know if we did the proper level of research as far as the cost of the trailer, and that was very well answered by the OES director. And 3 is priority. We've talked about dead areas in the county with radios, and not having that resolved up to this point is, in my opinion, a concern for our officers and the public. As long as those 3 things were being met, it satisfied me where I could vote on this item. I still would like, we have quite a few public safety people here this morning, that the search and rescue group, I think from the sheriff's office, did an outstanding job this past week because they're coordinated and organized. I think it's very important, whether it's through the fire department or through the sheriff's office or animal control, to have a little bit better coordination with the volunteers that are out there, and we have some fine people that know what they're doing with large animal rescues. It's not just somebody who likes a horse to work with emergency services, and that program has to be beefed up a little bit, because this is not the last emergency in our county. So that's the point I wanted to make today. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Botello. Supervisor Rivas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and certainly I appreciate the scrutiny to agenda items. Starting my 7th year on the board, so I've seen crazier things. The scrutiny of pencils and pens. So I certainly appreciate the scrutiny, but having this item be on our consent agenda, I certainly appreciate and I value the opinions and expertise of our public safety experts. I'm not a public safety expert, so I assume that this is on the agenda to serve a need that we have in this community. And certainly having gone through these floods and having seen the pictures and having myself gone out there to see the damage, certainly having a trailer, as Mr. Richmond had noted, at 3 in the morning, address the need that we have. And so I absolutely support this agenda item, and we'll move it forward. So thank you for staff and my colleagues.
Thank you, Supervisor Rivas. Before I ask the board for direction, I just want to respond to some of the members of the public. It is our responsibility to question and ask questions regardless of how the funds are coming to this community. We are ultimately responsible to the taxpayers, and that is you. We're here for your best interest. We're here to ask questions, regardless if it's an agenda item. If a supervisor wishes to pull an item out, it is within his or her right to pull that item and ask for discussion. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion for a staff recommendation on.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, item number, we'll go regular agenda item number 28. Kevin.
All right, so hello again. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to prepare anything really glamorous with any visuals for you, but I can give you an update on what's been going down at the Lovers Lane area and San Felipe Shore Road. As the board's aware from the last meeting, we had significant flooding 2 Wednesdays ago, where the fire department, San Jose Fire Department, CAL FIRE, needed to rescue people from their houses using boats and other means. But we had 2 more rounds of flooding since then, once on Friday and again on Sunday, and it's still extremely wet down there right now. First, good news is the governor of the state of California proclaimed a state of emergency for our county and I believe all 58 counties in the state yesterday, opening funding to assist counties and local jurisdictions in recovering from this disaster. So that's great news. The second and third round of flooding certainly exacerbated a lot of the damages that we suffered from the first one. Roads and bridges are compromised and will require a significant amount of repair in the tune of millions. I was just notified by RMA Director Brent Barnes yesterday that the bridge on San Felipe Road, just about a mile south of Shore Road, is potentially compromised to the point where the entire bridge needs to be replaced, and we've restricted access to the bridge only to local residents and only to small vehicles. A lot of what caused this flooding was just a tremendous amount of rain, both here and up in the Pacheco Pass area. The Pacheco Reservoir, which is several miles up 152, was spilling over the spillway at about 2 to 3 feet over the spillway, which contributed to all this flooding. Additionally, there was a levee break about a quarter mile east of the Lover's Lane Bridge, which caused the significant flooding to the north of the creek. We have a team out doing damage assessments once again today. To this date, we have four red tagged structures, and we're continuing to evaluate the total cost of the damages. We also have some representatives from the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, if you have any questions for them. But we'd like to thank all of our partners at this time for a tremendous team effort in responding to these flooding events. We issued reverse 911s, we received 911 calls, and have responded to all of the concerns, all of the concerns we've received from the public. Tomorrow, Supervisor Medina and myself will be giving Congressman Jimmy Panetta a tour of the area. And like I said, we're just gathering information. Now that we've gotten the gubernatorial proclamation, a lot of the hard work starts in terms of documentation, figuring out costs, RFP processes, everything that comes with fixing all the damages. I'd also like to thank the residents of the area. I was amazed by the resiliency and the whole community effort of that area. People watching each other, taking care of each other, and being vocal about how we as the county can help them. And I appreciate their patience through this difficult time, and them helping each other and helping us to help all the affected residents. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any specific questions. I'm hoping to come back and bring some footage so the board can see some of the damages, but last night was my first night of good sleep. So just didn't have time to put something together, so I apologize for that.
Thank you, Kevin. Supervisor Medina?
Well, just before I arrived here, I received a phone call from Fish and Game, and I will be speaking with them after this meeting to see what they can do to help us out, especially come springtime, if we can get into those rivers and clear them out. The individual I spoke to said he'd have someone come down here and look around anything that we need to do. He also said if there was any type of a emergency thing we need to do now, that we can call him and we can work on that also. My understanding right now, you can correct me if I'm not correct there, Kevin, is the levee that broke, we can't get back there to fix it at this point in time because it is too muddy, too wet, so we're going to have to wait until it dries out, correct?
That's correct. The access is extremely difficult. There's no road that goes directly to it, so essentially we'd need to build a road at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All I got to say, thank God, because we were going to send Anthony, our pit bull, over that group. Thank you. Supervisor Rivas?
Yes, I have a couple questions. And again, I want to thank staff and Kevin for your diligence out there and everything that you guys have done. And so I know you mentioned opening this funding stream, and so maybe you can educate me and the public. How does emergency cleanup assistance work, and what is the process, timeline, and expense, if any, to the county and to taxpayers?
So that's a difficult question, and at this time we're still gathering information on what exactly the governor has made available. We just got notified yesterday at like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. But traditionally, with a gubernatorial proclamation where he makes available funding through the California Disaster Assistance Act, or CDAA, there's a 25% local match. So the state will put in 75% and the locals must put in 25%. However, that's not necessarily a cash match. We were fortunate that we had a lot of volunteer hours that can be used as a match. Okay. A lot of the staff time we've put into this disaster can be used as a match to cover that 25%. What that 25% is, I don't know. We'll have to get out there once a lot of the water's gone so we can see what the damage is. But this event isn't just limited to the Lover's Lane, San Felipe area. There was widespread impacts to the entire county. Aromas had several mudslides, down trees. The Public Works Road Department did an amazing job. I mean, they were out all night, some nights, clearing roads, and all of that can go towards that 20% match, or we can request reimbursement through CDAA. So it's just all kind of a balancing act of figuring out what we submit for, what the match is, and there's even a possibility of the state waiving the match for some counties, and we can pursue that option as well.
Okay. And then, Mr. Chair, my second question is, I know Supervisor Medina had mentioned Fish and Game, and so do we have a plan or like a strategy moving forward to address the Pacheco Creek, the cleanup effort? I know that in a discussion you and I had, you alluded to the fact that, we have, a problem between ownership of the creek, a public-private issue between ownership of the creek. And so how do we move forward and mitigate those, the ownership issue?
At this point, the plan is to create a plan. We haven't really had too much time to figure out the details on that yet, but we are working with the Cal OES and Fish and Game to figure out how we can get in there. We've had a couple preliminary meetings with the Department of Water Resources, but that private property issue is definitely concerning. And the other piece of it is that where the levee failed was just kind of if it didn't fail there, it was going to fail somewhere else, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. So if we fix that breach, it may just cause a breach further down or upstream, and that's something we have to look at as well. And the cost, like I said, is unknown at this time, but that's why we're going to call in our state experts. That's why we're very fortunate the governor made these resources available to us so we can start having these conversations and start getting some work done to mitigate the impacts of this disaster.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Rivas. Supervisor Botello?
Yes, I think it's imperative right now that we figure out what the repair is going to be. In 1997, the major flooding occurred in March, and we're only halfway through the rainy season. We have to get in there this week, and when we declared our local emergency, that gave us a little bit of rights to go across private property, from my understanding. That's why we did this. I think private property owners out there, myself included, would welcome any sort of help to repair the damage to the levees. And now that we have the governor's office that is on board, I guess, with the disaster, which I certainly want to thank their representative for being here today, and maybe they'll answer a few questions on how that funding and how quickly it's be available to fund not just a cleanup. We have still an ongoing disaster going on without a levee, and it's not that much rain that we've had that caused major problems. So I think it's imperative that we develop that plan quickly. The RFP process, this is not a summer job. This is a job for right now, and an evaluation of the rest of the levee, because you're right, it will break somewhere else. And I've seen it there a couple of times already, and that's where Fish and Game comes in. The lack of channel maintenance is the problem. And in 10 years from now, it's a plug up again if we don't have some sort of maintenance program there. And that's what the Pacheco Flood District was created to help that area out with. So I think we need to have reports through Supervisor Medina to the rest of the board as how we're progressing with the repair of those levees while the sun is out for the next week or so, and get in there and fix it. Thank you.
Supervisor Munzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Kevin, I want to thank you for all your hard work, keeping us informed of what was going on. I want to thank all the staff, the volunteers. I know we were dickering over whether to buy a horse trailer or not, stock trailer, whatever you want to call it, but that's another issue. But we certainly appreciate all the time, effort, and hard work that everybody put into it. I want to just commend the residents out there. I went through it. I went through it in 97. I know what it's like. We need not only to get the state behind us, but hopefully this declaration by the governor will kick in the federal FEMA process also. Mm-hmm. We need that kind of help. And I would say not only do we need to deal with the cleanup of Pacheco Creek, but all of our waterways in the county needs to be cleaned up. Years ago, the property owners took on the responsibility of keeping those waterways clear. Unfortunately, Fish and Game has made it very difficult for private owners to do that. And I think all of our waterways are at risk of the same thing happening. This year, the heavy rain came through, as you said, Pacheco Pass area, the Guasabi area, and it affected the Pacheco Creek. What I experienced, it was the Tres Venus Creek got the bulk of the rains. But again, we need the regulations to be, loosened a little bit. And hopefully this state of emergency of the county will cover the whole county. And maybe some of our other property owners will be able to get in there and deal with the other waterways also, with Fish and Game's blessing. We need to work with Fish and Game. I understand that. But again, Fish and Game needs to be able to work with us and make sure that we don't have another issue either later this year, later this rain season, or the next rainy season. Because the property owners will get in there, they will maintain their property if they're allowed to. And I say to the residents, it's a long process dealing with the state and the feds if we get the feds' help, but hang in there, work with them, and it'll be beneficial to them to go through the process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I'm open up to the public. Anyone from the public?
Sure. My name is Wayne Norton, and I live in Aromas. And I didn't come to the meeting today to talk about this, but as wearing my hat as a member of the board of directors of the Aromas Water District, this is an important issue throughout the county, and I appreciate Mr. O'Neill mentioning Aromas in some of the issues that we have in Aromas. I also want to say that one of the things I really love about living in this county is the way people step up when there's a need. The folks in Lover's Lane area, I have some friends that live out there. I am heartened by their spirit of community and joining together and helping each other and working to try to find the positive in this situation. The question I have actually is, with the state money and perhaps with the federal disaster, is there the possibility to do some preventative work? Because we all can probably think of some places that weren't necessarily disasters now, but are going to be if we don't do something. Certainly in our district, Supervisor Botello, we can probably fill a map with places that are potential disasters. So I hope that if it's possible, that we also do some planning about trying to find vulnerabilities and see if we can prevent some future disasters too. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else in the public? Okay, I'll close it.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I wanted to invite our RMA director up to give a quick, brief report on the roads and on the bridges.
Yes, I just want to share with my fellow supervisors, and this is something that was actually brought by Supervisor Munzer, that because, Louis, you are the face of San Benito County on TV, it's ice cream on you next time.
Before Brent gives his report, I discussed this, and Mr. Botello never said chocolate or vanilla.
Okay. Thank you, Brent.
I'd say Rocky Road, but that'd be a really bad pun. Thank you.
Delete it all.
You tee them up, I'll hit them. Very briefly, I wanted to give the board a little bit more information on the bridge on San Felipe. It's a wood span bridge, three spans, and it was built in 1952. The water came up to the level, I don't know if it overtopped the deck of the bridge itself, but it came up to the level of the deck on the underside. So it's a wood structure, 3 trusses, a concrete deck overlay, and then an asphalt deck on top of that. It's quite old. The bridge appears to have been moving a little bit because of the water circulation, the high flow under there. So we're concerned about the structural integrity of it. First of all, it's old. Secondly, heavy loads and so on. In addition, there was water flow yesterday. Actually, it looked like an artesian well coming up out of the ground just to the east side of this bridge, and creating some additional flow, some dynamics, hydraulic dynamics in the vicinity of the road there. So we're concerned a little bit about the road shoulder and the competency of the road itself. That may be either an artesian well, which I think is unlikely, or a drain pipe from one of the farm fields, but it's clearly directing water against the edge of the bridge. We're going to close the road temporarily, San Felipe Road, and put in a jersey barrier, I call it, a K-rail solution, and we'll be bringing the contract for that to the CIO, and perhaps as early as this afternoon that can be deployed so that we can create a safe situation for crossing that bridge. We are going to restrict it to light vehicles only, though. Yesterday when we were out there, a motor coach, a